Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Let's get right to the day's news. Former President Joe Biden has filed a lawsuit against the Justice Department seeking to block the release of files related to interviews he conducted with a biographer that later became a central part of a special counsel investigation into his handling of classified documents. So you remember that there were some audio files that were released in which Joe Biden sounded very out of it. We got these transcripts, and these transcripts of this Robert Hur interview that were, again, based on a series of investigations into what Biden is now trying to keep sealed. You heard Joe Biden forget the year or the decade that his son had died, that being Beau. Of course, we got a lot of very concerning information from the president. The former president, Joe Biden, is now trying desperately to keep the Department of Justice from releasing the audio files from that original interview where he allegedly violated the law. Remember, Robert Hur's report said Biden violated the law. I think he did. I think he kept classified documents. I think he knew what he was doing, but he's too incompetent and too elderly to stand trial. So now Biden's, let's face it, handlers are filing a lawsuit on behalf of the former president in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, seeking to block the DOJ from releasing about 70 hours of audio files and transcripts to the House Judiciary Committee from interviews with ghostwriter Mark Zwanitzer that were used for his 2017 memoir, Promise Me Dad. The interviews, of course, were conducted in 2016 and 2017. What's bizarre to me here is that the lawsuit specifically states he's trying to keep the audio files from being released to the House Judiciary Committee. So this isn't as though the DOJ is just going to publish a list of audio files. The House Judiciary Committee wants these to ascertain whether or not Joe Biden, first of all, his magical super duper ultra list of a bajillion pardons at the end of his administration that were signed by AutoPen, if they actually covered the crimes that Joe Biden may have committed, and then Robert Hur elected not to try him in. You say, why does this matter? Why would Joe Biden in and of itself, this particular lawsuit, why would this matter? I mean, the guy's rather old anyway. What's the big deal? There are others that are implicated in the classified document scandal, as well as things that Joe Biden may have alluded to that didn't make it to the memoir about Hillary Clinton, his time with Barack Obama, and things that they chose to do that would be under a significant amount of scrutiny legally moving forward. Now, the suit does come after 3 separate Freedom of Information Act, that's FOIA, lawsuits which were previously filed attempting to unseal them. So again, a FOIA request is when I say, hey, federal government or state government, you are required to release to me information that isn't super duper ultra classified or personal financial or locational information. You have it on your email servers and communications. I'm asking for it. I'm paying for you to have those email servers. Turn them over. And Joe Biden is saying, no, which is roughly translated, no, you can't do that. I want those to be sealed. So Biden and his attorneys have long maintained that the files are exempt from the Freedom of Information Act by sort of trying to suggest that Joe Biden's, even though he participated in the interview while he was still the vice president of the United States, from federal property and then used materials to facilitate this series of interviews for the memoir that were federal property, being the classified documents themselves. Well, these are exempt from FOIA requests, and they're suddenly and magically personal. Yeah, I'm not seeing that one work. I'm not seeing that one work at all. Now, on the matter of the courts, the Supreme Court of the United States has issued a preliminary sort of stay. That's not the right word for it. The Supreme Court of the United States has, after Alabama asked it to restore the legislature-drawn congressional map that is no longer racially gerrymandered in time for the 2026 primaries, Clarence Thomas didn't approve an administrative stay, meaning this: the Supreme Court of the United States is going to allow Alabama and the lower federal court that said, we don't care what the Supreme Court said, you're going to have to do some racial gerrymandering. They're allowing that to play out a little bit more before they get involved. However, Alabama did request a fine-defined ruling from the court by 10 a.m. on June the 1st, or as soon as possible thereafter. Why? guys, it's primary season. We're here. The midterms are here. They've arrived. And if the Supreme Court doesn't rule on a couple of these things, in this case, which they've already ruled on, obviously the racial gerrymandering as a whole, if they don't slap down this federal court, then you're going to have a no time for primaries situation that's going to royally screw up the entire midterm election, which has never happened in our nation's history at this scale before. So I think that you're going to see something by Monday, June the 1st, in which case you'll have to swing on back by the Tony Kinnett cast for that particular update. Now, there are some other court-related things like the Missouri Supreme Court unanimously upholding their redistricting effort. But alas, there are a couple of other ethical complaint things that I think are a little more pressing for the news. For example, the ethics complaint that was just filed against former Attorney General Pam Bondi. So according to Norm Eisen, a senior fellow at the Brookings Governance Group from the Brookings Institute, this particular ethics complaint claims that Bondi ran the DOJ like a weapon. And now 100+ scholars and retired judges and a retired Florida Supreme Court Chief Justice Peggy Quince, incredible, joined by totally nonpartisan Democracy Defenders Fund and lawyers defending American democracy, are holding her accountable. Wow, gee whiz. So I've looked at this particular series of allegations, and here's what's in here. Like, here's the goods. So they are claiming that Bondi created an environment in which DOJ lawyers were induced to engage in acts they were ethically prohibited from doing, under threat of suspension or termination, or were fired for not doing so. Here's the problem. There's no whistleblowers from her tenure that actually suggest this whatsoever. There's none of this. Also, they claimed that she repeatedly denied the constitutional rights of Americans by seeking to bring charges against defendants without probable cause. Nope, there's nothing in here that actually suggests that she violated any type of ethical regulations or any laws under the United States Constitution or the duly elected Congress and then presidentially signed laws at the federal level. So essentially what this is it's a large whining ethical complaint. Now, on the Bondi side of things, it is also now been released to the public that Bondi did discover after she was fired that she had thyroid cancer. That's also now something that she is currently dealing with. So there's a little bit more in the Attorney General's situation that does deserve to be discussed. But there are a couple of breaking developments over from New Jersey. So specifically, that the New Jersey riots are continuing. So right now in front of Delaney Hall, there are a couple of individuals who have made the decision to build magical super duper ultra barricades to try to prevent individuals from immigration custom enforcement raids. And again, many of these individuals, in fact, the vast majority of them who have been brought to this Delaney Hall facility for immigration customs enforcement, have final orders of removal from immigration judges that are very old, as in years and decades old. And there's this mass crowd out there that is suggesting that the super duper Eich evil Hitler Gestapo is trying to send them to the place that they illegally immigrated from. You know, interesting stuff. So there's all kinds of nonsense that's going on. CBS reported on quite the clash that happened last night that has continued into today. So they get in their little Red Rover line. And then they start throwing things. Make this full screen here for you. They start throwing things, and there's some pepper spraying and just some general assorted shenaniganry. Yeah, you know, I mean, again, we've seen this kind of stuff outside of ICE facilities before. Now, radio crew, we do have to send you over to the commercial break because it is unfortunately that FCC rule that we must obey. We're going to continue on the live stream here because no breaks on that side. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, lest you think that this is a group of very serious individuals with serious grievances, no, absolutely not. This is, again, the same place that we reported on last year, in which Representative LaMonica McIver showed up and did the Kool-Aid Man, oh yeah, body slam and assaulted federal law enforcement. Well, this group of high IQ individuals is cheering if any brown person at all, any person who looks as though they might be from Central or South America, leaves the facility, people start cheering wildly. It's something. So like people are cheering, he's like, oh yeah, wow, the brown people, we did it, guys, we got the people released. As one person shouts, hey, those are employees, those are ICE officials that you're cheering for leaving the facility. Excellent and exciting stuff for sure. Now we get to the posturing, because the posturing, before we get to some of the other, again, bizarre kind of riot style stuff today, comes from various representatives who are doing the same, showing up. I have an order to be here. I'm very great. You must let me in to examine the conditions. So one of these guys is Representative Brendan Gutenschwager. So who made the post. That's whose clip I'm taking. I want to make sure I give the credit there correctly here. This is of Congressman Adriano Espaillat, saying this morning outside the Delaney Hall detention facility, he has to be there. He has an unstructured settlement and he needs cash now.
I have a court order here that allows me to come in. I won't go in because the Constitution protects me.
Let her in!
So you have this big old, hey, you know, I have a right to be here. I'm going to do this, that, and yeah, that kind of crap. The problem, and this would be the really big, full-sized, grown-up issue that they're facing in this particular instance, you saw the doors being slid right open. The doors went right open. They let him right in. No issues. They said, sure, come on in, no problem. So we're doing they refuse to let me in, but also I'm being let right in maneuver. A bizarre decision, a strange decision for sure. Again, personally, I don't suggest doing that kind of stuff, but that is the situation. Senator Cory Booker did the same thing. He said, quote, today I visited Delaney Hall as part of my congressional oversight duties, meeting with both those who run the facility and privately with the people being held there. After seeing who is being held and the conditions under which they're detained, I believe most Americans would agree this facility is a moral stain on our community. Chuck Schumer did the same thing and just got ratioed to hell and gone. This is modern concentration camp nonsense, which is trying to whip up the people who are at the facility today into just going full riot mode and assaulting federal law enforcement. This was earlier this afternoon. So a little bit of pushing and shoving and hugging. Now, what makes this particular thing a little bit more interesting, I would say, is that in this instance, you actually have media who is showing up, whether from CBS or from CNN or from Fox News or from some of the other outlets in the independent journalist sphere, who are just being openly attacked by those who are at the riot. So in one instance, an independent journalist, Cam Higbee, he shows up wearing like a keffiyeh to kind of like blend in with the crowd. And some lady who looks like Mia Khalifa on meth shows up and starts trying to choke him in his own keffiyeh, which is a weird thing to do.
They got that big ass keffiyeh. You're not about pro-Palestine, you fake infiltrator.
Don't fucking touch my shit.
I like that. Just exciting stuff. You're a fake infiltrator. You're not even from Palestine. Brilliant. Beautiful stuff. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. Tons of news to cover tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal. So the President of the United States did respond to these particular protests of joy and excitement outside of the New Jersey facility. Here's what the president said today from the cabinet meeting.
We run the finest facilities anywhere in the world of their type. But we have some horrible killers. We have guys that have murdered numerous people in there. And these are the people they're trying to protect. There's nobody that runs a facility like we do. Mark Wade, please.
Yeah, it shows this radical left Democrats' priorities when they decide to go out and protest a detention center where we're housing rapists, child predators, murderers, drug dealers, and they choose Memorial Day of all the time to go protest something that they say that that it's because they're on a hunger strike when there was only a handful of individuals that was refusing to eat because they want their ethnic group or their ethnic right food. Well, they can go back to their country and get whatever food they want. The fact is, we're giving them the calories they want. This isn't Holiday Inn. We're giving sanitation. But for the Democrats and the governor, like Governor Sherrill and Senator Kim and Senator Booker, to go out and do something like this of all the days is very frustrating. And we see Antifa signs are literally out there. The local police literally refusing to respond. They barricade it, not allowing our employees to come in and out. ICE has to go out there, remove the barricade, and then you have one of the senators complain because he got splattered with a pepper ball. I'm sorry, you probably shouldn't have been there.
Fair, very fair indeed. Now, this particular cabinet meeting had a couple of better details than just, the president of the United States talking about the New Jersey riot. And that does bring us to kind of on the broader side. There are a couple of international updates that I very, very much recommend diving into. So first of all, regarding the Iranian situation, the president suggested regarding the Strait of Hormuz, whoever is involved in the future in any kind of a security agreement, they're either going to play by the rules or we're not going to get into this. So there was a lot of helter-skelter freaking out over the weekend because there were rumors of this deal and it was going to be the best deal ever. It was going to be the worst deal ever. And I'm just coming on the other side of this. I'm really not hearing it. Here's the president saying, even if it's Oman, fine. If they really would like to feel a little landscaping on their coastline from the U.S. Navy, then by all means, Oman can participate.
No, the strait's going to be open to everybody. It's international waters. Nobody's going to control it. We're going to watch over it. We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. That's part of the negotiation that we have. They would like to control it. Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up. They understand that. They'll be fine.
Okay, interesting for sure. The president also made it clear regarding releasing or easing sanctions on Iran. Here's his plan and kind of the rationale he has behind it.
Is the U.S. considering easing sanctions on Iran to allow Iran to sell its crude to market?
No, we're not talking about any easing of sanctions or giving money. No sanctions, no money, no nothing. We have control of money that they claim is theirs. We'll keep control of that money. And when they behave properly and when they do what's right, we'll let them have their money. But right now, we're not doing that. And it's one thing is not contingent on the other.
Now, that brings us over to the president of the United States on what we're going to see over the next couple of months regarding the U.S. economy. Because right now, the gas prices are still high. Now, again, there's a question that was asked we're going to get to a little bit later on whether or not the gas prices going down just a bit are because people are just kind of saying, hey, this is the new normal. This is kind of what the United States is going to be doing for the next couple of months, or whether they're anticipating some kind of a deal. Here's the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and what he believes is kind of going to happen in the next couple of months regarding gas prices and kind of the supply chain side of fertilizers, other kinds of materials that the manufacturing economy uses that come out of some of the oil products from the Strait of Hormuz.
We're entering the second half of our 250th anniversary year with renewed optimism and momentum. It has never been a better time to be an American, and as you said earlier, we have a record number of Americans working. The economy that you are building is not only strong, but secure and resilient and better positioned to compete globally. Real GDP has risen 2.7% over the past 4 quarters, something that many economists said couldn't be done. In the first quarter of 2026, despite the Iran conflict, GDP grew at a 2% annual rate. The Atlanta Fed GDP now is predicting 4.3% for this quarter. In terms of prices, I believe the prices are transitory. Oil will be lower than pre-conflict levels when this ends. Natural gas is already down, as you mentioned. Drug and pharmaceutical prices, they are plummeting, and rent is down.
Now, again, not a bad list of things. There are still a lot of indicators that need to go right, and this does have to end. And I would argue that it has to end, as I've said here on the show before, by the end of Q2. If we get to the end of June, end of July, and we're still doing this, maybe there's a deal, maybe not, maybe so, maybe not, then Republicans are going to have a couple of fears heading into the midterm season. There's no other way around that, because you do need about a month or two for things to lower, and then because of the expanded deregulation from the Trump administration, for the lines between Republican red states and then Democrat blue states, and we'll get to California here in a couple of minutes, to really become clear. That's going to have to happen. Now, some of my counterparts, let's say, some of our competitors here that also do, kind of live stream shows on all broadcast media, have spent the last couple of days clickbaiting you into suggesting that the war is, it's just around the corner. Oh, the deal is so close. It's so close. It's so close. I'm not going to do that with you guys. I'm not going to clickbait you into suggesting that it's just around the corner, because that's not honest with you. I'm not seeing any indicators that suggest that hesto presto, your Domino's pizza delivery peace order is just 5 minutes away. I'm not. When I start to see indicators that are going to bring those forward, I will be glad to share with you. But until that point, I'm not going to try to get you guys to, oh, you got to watch the video. Oh man, it's finally here. Oh, it's going to be incredibly amazing. So far, I'm not seeing any significant movement. Now, the president has made a couple of statements that have been taken wildly out of context. So it was 7 a.m, and I was as the national correspondent for the Daily Signal, I was sitting in a media interview getting ready to go on camera. And they cut over to the president saying that he didn't care about the stock market, that he didn't care about consumer prices, because in a negotiation standpoint, he doesn't want the Iranian regime to say, you need to make deal because price is very high. And the president said, no, I'm interested in winning. Well, another style of that happened. You're going to see all the news clips, if you haven't seen them already, from the cabinet meeting today. The president was asked regarding these negotiations, regarding ending this war, are you concerned that the Iranians, are you concerned about the midterms, essentially? Are you doing all of this and trying to finish it up so that America isn't mad at you during midterm season? Here was the president on this particular question.
Their economy is in free fall. They have 250% inflation. Their money has no value. Their whole economic system is broken down. They thought they were going to outweight me. We'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms. Look what happened last night. That was the prelude to the midterms. People understand it. They know that, very simple, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I'm doing that for the world. I'm not doing it just for us.
Now, what's been clipped, the 10-second clip that's already being shared, is Trump saying, I don't care about the midterms. I don't care. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I want to win. I don't want to jeopardize any negotiations or a final deal. I don't want him to get out there and say, oh, the midterms, oh no, the midterms. He's not doing that. Now, we've got a lot of stuff to cover because that's the right side of the aisle heading into midterms. The left side's up next, and it's a special one. Radio crew, we're going to send you off to that wonderful commercial sphere. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal. So the Republicans have a little bit of an uphill battle, although strangely not in their control heading into the midterms. A strange thing to say, by the way, that Republicans really aren't in charge of whether they do super duper well in the midterms. Primaries are falling out, and I told you before that as far as going up against, for example, in Texas, James Talarico, it didn't really matter whether John Cornyn or Ken Paxton won, because Talarico is awful. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. For a lot of other races in the country, you're seeing the same thing, whether it's a very populist candidate or one of the most moderate rhino candidates we can find, like Susan Collins in Maine, for example. It really doesn't matter that much to voters if they're not willing to come out on the left side for the most radical, insane, goofy goober people that they can find. And I had guessed that if they actually saw maybe Ken Paxton win in Texas like he did yesterday, and man, that was a real belt to the rear end moment. I mean, we ended up calling that one earlier, I'd say, by accident. But as to the situation developing, we had to kind of make a call, and I thought, well, he's up 200,000 votes. I'm going to go ahead and call it. I don't think Austin's going to pivot it back, and they didn't. So now Democrats are making the move to go all in on Talarico. And I said, if Ken Martin decides now is the moment to spend oodles, canoodles, and toaster strudels of money in Texas, given that they're already $3.5 million just in debt, they have $14 million on hand, and they are $17.5 million in debt. So true, net sum here, they're really down in the hole. They're going to go even more into debt on Talarico. That's going to be a bad one. That is going to be a rough one. And I do want to take a quick moment here to say a very kind thank you, or a very big thank you to the kind super chats that have been coming in. A $5 one from Subconscious Gaming, a very kind $2 super chat from Mean Sugar, nice, and from Velvet Jazz, $5. I will get to some of those and what those comments are later. I wanted to thank you for them. I do want to get into James Talarico right up front. The platform Democrats have suggested for 2026 is just insane. And they are making the poster child of this particular election cycle James Talarico, but somehow, trying to make it Beto O'Rourke, but just somehow gayer. Really. So they've come out, and we'll get to, some of the extra stuff in a bit. They've gone with this guy who has famous tweets like, white skin gives me and every white American immunity from the virus. But we spread it wherever we go. Through our words, our actions, and our systems. We don't have to be showing symptoms like a white hood or a Confederate flag to be contagious. Just my goodness. Now, they've gone all in on him because now they think they're facing Paxton. They're ready to go. So here they go. They've got him standing in like the awkward sort of Vanity Fair stance. And they're like fired up, ready to go. It's time to take back Texas. Guys, this ain't going to work. This ain't going to work, Democrats. This isn't going to fly. Now, this is awkward and lame and gay enough. It gets worse, though. Like, November, here we come. And they have him chewing on a turkey. Like, again, he's trying to push back on the fact that, like, claims that he's vegan, which, okay, if that's where you want to spend the energy. Posting a picture where it appears as though you are holding a rather phallic object to your mouth. Yeah, I don't really know if that's the move. I don't know if that's the move here. I don't know if that's where you want to be going. Now, he's got a ton of really bad policy decisions. I mean, the whole God is non-binary thing has plagued him for quite a bit, and it's not going to get any better. We're going to dive into this because from this dude to Mazie Hirono to Jamie Raskin, there's a ton to touch. It's a ton to tackle. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. We got to bring the radio crew back.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Let's dive into some of just the most god-awful campaign strategy that I think I've ever seen for midterms. The midterms are here, guys. Even if there are a couple of primaries that are left, Michigan's is in August. Alabama's just going to be playing Ring Around the Rosie until the Supreme Court finally weighs in. The midterms are here. The strategies are laid out. Republicans, their entire strategy is we're just going to hope that the stuff in the executive branch works out because the Senate's doing nothing. All right, John Cornyn's throwing his toys on the ground. Bill Cassidy's throwing his toys on the ground. Mitch McConnell, Tom Tillis are useless. They're stubborn. They're angry. And then you have Susan Collins, who is flopping around like a dead fish, and then Lisa Murkowski, who also has no idea where she is or what she's doing. So the Republican Senate's doing nothing. That means it doesn't matter what the House is passing through. Congress can do nothing. They have to count on the Trump administration working things out. Okay, that's a gamble. It's a strategy that is, believe it or not, more effective than what the Democrats have lined up. The Democrats are going all in on James Talarico, which is where they tell you he's so moderate, he's so amazing. This guy, he's, oh, wait a minute. We've seen this exact thing before. And the media are doing the exact same thing yet again. Beto O'Rourke, Beto, back in 2018, Remember, Mr. Moderate Man who has a chance at turning Texas blue.
You can't go 10 feet without an interruption from a Beto backer.
So much. I love you too. Thank you all.
You're a rock star.
No, there's just so many great
really
people who are.
You can't go anywhere without getting...
Hey.
Listen to the ABC. You're like a rock star. Oh my gosh. Look at, is he looking at me? Is he, oh, wow.
O'Rourke, a 3-term congressman from El Paso, has certainly captured the entire nation's attention as well.
Wow, I mean, and then he got absolutely spanked in that election. Colin Allred, same thing. I have heard this before. Same with the Pete Buttigieg race for the presidency. It didn't work. It didn't play out. And they're trying the exact same stuff. Now, again, this brings us over to Talarico and his weird non-binary remark. So again, James Talarico has said Jesus is trans, and he has alleged that the Bible says very clearly, because he tries to pretend to be some kind of evangelical, he claims that God is non-binary and there are 6 genders. So finally, he went on the lead with Jake Tapper because, of course, Republicans are roasting Talarico over the coals for this. Why? Because the real autopsy on the reason the Democrats lost in 2024 is because of this: Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. That America was tired of the LGBTQ plus 2IA Pride Month all the time nonsense. And also it being in every elementary and library, every elementary school and library. So Tapper asks him outright about the whole non-binary thing. Here's the response.
National Republican Senate Committee is already highlighting comments that you've made as a state representative. For example, they're highlighting this.
God is both masculine and feminine and everything in between. God is non-binary.
What is your response to them using that, and explain what you were talking about?
Well, I understand that comment is a little provocative. I said it on the House floor when the extremists in the Republican legislature were picking on school kids who were different. But I don't think it's controversial theologically. Most Christians would acknowledge that God is beyond gender. In fact, the Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, said that in Christ there is neither male nor female.
Well, that's totally different. In Christ there's neither male nor female. He said, take it up with the Apostle Paul. First of all, not at all what the book of Galatians says. And I will actually take a little victory lap here and say that when I was at Maranatha Baptist University in Wisconsin, I took a class specifically on the book of Galatians. And it doesn't take a biblical scholar to tell you to be in Christ, there's neither male nor female, nor Jew, nor Greek, nor free, nor bondservant, etc. That means that there is no requirement for your race, your gender, or your status to receive the gift of salvation through Jesus Christ. That's not talking about whether God is considered male or female or a man or a woman. And just to really dunk on this, he's either illiterate or he's willfully stupid. And here's why. So to give you the actual language here, the New Testament is written in Koine Greek, except for the parts where Christ speaks in Aramaic. So Koine Greek, Paul repeatedly throughout the New Testament, including Galatians, refers to the Lord God in the Koine as either pater, meaning father, or as ho theos, which is grammatically masculine, and it means the one true God. So in the Greek, and by the way, when God is referred to in his multitude of names, Yahweh, Jehovah, Jireh, that when the Lord God is referred to in Aramaic and in Hebrew in the Old Testament, it is a masculine term inherently. He's just wrong. He's just wrong. And the idea you're going to slip that past Christians as though there's this crew of evangelicals out there who's like ready and super duper. Not even Joel Osteen would mess up scripture that bad, Chief. No, that's not going to work. And he tries to kind of walk this back in an interview with CBS. It doesn't quite work. And this is their poster child. They've decided. AOC and Mamdani are doing weird like hijab and throbe dances in New York. Kathy Hochul can't remember the Knicks. Mazie Hirono is Mazie Hirono. So they got Talarico. That's all they got. Here you go.
Said God is non-binary. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think I was being intentionally provocative with that statement. But what it means is that God can't be defined by human categories. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, says that in Christ there is neither male.
So then he's going to bring that garbage up again. So first of all, the cool part about being an evangelical is that we argue very clearly and specifically that God inspired the Bible to be written. So those are the words of God. Hence, the old look in the word of God. That's where that comes from, Cool, I know, right? So, no. And also now trying to say, well, I'm just trying to be provocative. That's not going to fly either. Again, none of this, you haven't heard me mention Ken Paxton. You haven't heard me mention any of the other candidates that are up against guys like Graham Plattner, again, regarding Susan Collins. You haven't heard me mention their policies. Why? It doesn't matter. Because as long as they're going to act like crazy people, there are a lot of Republicans who will just kind of shoulder the burden and go, well, whatever the Republicans are putting together, even if they're lame, even if there was a moment in their life where they were an idiot and they cheated on their wife, something like that, that's better than the person who says we need to provide transgender abortion to children. What in the actual what? And that's what James Talarico is providing. And these kind of statements, like the tweet that I showed you regarding James Talarico and just the weird whiteness nonsense, not just him, with the turkey leg, we'll get to that. It's for every Democrat Senate candidate. Every single one of them has this kind of crap. From Graham Plattner, where he decided that, let's take Purple Heart veterans who were shot multiple times and say, actually, this guy deserved to die. And it's only because the Taliban didn't aim a little better that this guy who served in combat didn't die. And I think he really should have. So Graham Plattner is getting roasted over this kind of a garbage. Then, of course, you have, from the Michigan Senate side, Abdul El Sayed, who's doing the same. ICE, all of immigration customs enforcement, needs to be abolished. And also, here I am being an insufferable bicyclist. I know things are bad, and I know my policies are part of what helps make those kinds of things expensive. For example, Michigan's gas not exactly being something to sneeze at in comparison to surrounding states, but I'm biking to work. Oh, wow. That's so incredible. Yeah. And you know what? Way to go. Incredible strategy. Best of luck to him. Mazie Hirono, God bless her. She's out here trying the exact same kind of stuff, going after the SAVE Act. Although she calls it the Save Trump Act, because voter ID is really bad. This is it. They've released the strategy. Here we go.
There's this huge push to pass the SAVE Act. It's more Save Trump Act. And what does that act do? It would require millions and millions, all of us who are registered to vote, suddenly we will have to show proof of citizenship, either through a birth certificate or a passport. Millions of people don't have either. Married people who take their partner's name will not have a name that matches their birth certificate. So what are they going to do?
Guys, we've gone over this. We've done these arguments before. These are weeks, months old. Where are the strategy firms that are supposed to say, guys, we've already done that? Where's the new stuff? Where's the goods? Every Tuesday, I sit down with Mike Leon, who's a great dude, more left than I am. And we get a chance to sit down and kind of have a little bit of a debate and a discussion over on NTD. And this was the subject of this last week, which is what are the Democrats bringing forward to the table? And Mike and I agreed from different ends of the spectrum on this instance. The Democrats have brought forward nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
This bold strategy that they've got, where they're just going to run their greatest hits, might be effective. Might be effective if there was anything at all that they had to show for it. They've already forgotten that by trying to make Mickey Sherrill or Abigail Spanberger pretend to be normal, that's really what did most of the work for them in those gubernatorial elections in in New Jersey and Virginia, respectively. Nope, they're going back to the stuff that didn't work, which is bizarre. Radio Crew will catch you guys in a bit. We're going to head over to the live stream side while you're on your commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. The same on crime. The same on crime. There are these things called teen takeovers where a bunch of parents who are bad at parenting allow their children to run around the city and burn things and assault things and smash things with hammers and, do the same kinds of things that we've come to expect from various neuroscientist cultures. Here is Chicago Mayor Johnson saying, you know who's to blame? Not the crime, not the awful culture that he has consistently perpetuated in Chicago. It's the social media companies. It's Mark Zuckerberg who's sitting around going, yes, have them do teen takeovers. Stupid. Here's Brandon Johnson, Mr. Prison is Violence.
We prevent the vast majority of these from ever taking place. There is an effort in city council to hold these social media apparatuses accountable. I believe that we should continue to explore that, and I'm going to continue to work with Alderman Hall around that. It's why we're actually taxing these big tech companies for the role that they have played in harming the mental health and well-being of our young people.
Best of luck to you. I've heard this one before. We're going to police social media. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. There is one argument, and I mean just one argument that Democrats have had at all yet that has been remotely effective, and that's trying to go after like the AI data center thing. But even that's not particularly working very well, because you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who showed up before a committee holding a dirty jar of dirt, like it's the Pirates of the Caribbean, like, oh, I've got a jar of dirt, that kind of garbage, suggesting that it is the data center that turned the water brown. And everyone collectively slapped themselves in the face, because that's not at all how that works. They are bringing forward whatever the opposite of their best and brightest is. So regarding AOC, there's a clip of her today celebrating some Islamic holiday with Zohran Mamdani, where she's in a hijab. And a lot of people think this is like really crazy bonkers, oh my gosh, shocker value stuff. I just think it's silly and it's kind of pandering, but anyway.
To our neighbors, our community, and to this country.
So first you have AOC. She's got the headscarf on. Okay, sure, whatever.
To our neighbors, our community, and to this country.
And then you have Zohran Mamdani behind her wearing a really, really long shirt. It's not a throbe, but like it's a mixed soccer jersey kind of like throbe, whatever. And people are suggesting, wow, that's, it's really terrible. And I don't really care. I think it's just pandering. Like in the last election, that they kind of flirted with the idea of going all in on the Gaza stuff instead of actually delivering what voters wanted. Now they've decided this is absolutely what they have to do. No ifs, ands, buts, or coconuts. That's what Ro Khanna is saying. We need to go far more in on all the Gaza stuff. Thomas Massie just freaking tried this and it didn't work. Marjorie Taylor Greene has tried this. It didn't work. Tucker Carlson, he tried this. It didn't work. Megyn Kelly tried this, and no matter how many F-bombs she put in front of it, it didn't work. It hasn't worked. And so how is the left going to, salvage this in any way, shape, or form? Well, not very well. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. We got to talk about a couple of these bills. It's bad. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. There's a group of individuals who believes that right now all of the polls are showing super duper ultra maximum momentum for the Democrats. So far, what we have seen as far as actual on the ground polling analysis that is talking to registered voters, not just I'm totally going to vote. I'm totally going to get in there. No, there is not actually a large Democrat base that appears to be getting ready to come out for this particular midterm election. And one of the reasons is because so far what we've seen is a lot of the same silly garbage that we have seen before. So, for example, Mayor Jacob Fry of Minneapolis got up on Memorial Day and decided it's time to send out a Remember George Floyd tweet. Before he mentioned anything about honoring those who served, got to get out the George Floyd tweet. Then the Democrat Party decided to get out there and suggest that the Americans who have died in Operation Epic Fury had died in vain, and made that political before they took that down very quickly. Tim Walz decided to go out during the day because, the man's got to have something to do, governor of Minnesota, and just got down with his bad self in George Floyd Square. Again, this is their pitch to voters. Yeah, get it, white boy. Yeah. Incredible. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. That is so relatable. I love it. In the meantime, you have a couple of cases in New York and California in which they are actually getting some policy passed across the board. So first of all, California Democrats have introduced Assembly Bill 2669 that will give illegal immigrants lighter sentences than American citizens. Why? In order to force prosecutors to avoid immigration consequences for illegals who commit crimes. So right now, according to federal law, things like the Lake and Riley Act, if you are an illegal immigrant, you're here illegally, and you violate the law, there is a federal law that says you have to be turned over to Immigration Customs Enforcement for deportation. Because if the argument is, well, you just ended up here and just shucks, you mean you just woke up one morning and found yourself on the other side of the border illegally, then you should get a fair chance. But if you're here committing a bunch of additional crimes, then you've already shown that you're not here to actually stay and play the American game or whatever it is the Cato Institute suggests is why people are showing up here. So the California Assembly is putting forward a bill. I'm going to be clear with you. It's going to pass. It is. It's going to make it out of committee. It's going to go right to Newsom. Now, whether the federal courts actually get in there and do anything is up for debate. It's probably unlikely, though, because if California just says, hey, we're going to charge illegal immigrants more kindly if they break the law than U.S. citizens, which, by the way, remember when Trump said during the State of the Union address that it's a responsibility of congressmen and representatives, senators, governors, officials from around the country to stand up for American citizens first, and Republicans stood and cheered and Democrats sat there and scowled. And I said, hey, that's a political theater, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. This would be an example of that. Also, California and New York is also going all in on the anti-weaponization fund. So, for example, the Department of Justice has set up a fund using, again, available funds already approved by Congress that allow those who have been prosecuted by the DOJ for political reasons to get compensation and damages or payment for damages, actual restitution. And this made Gavin Newsom very, 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 very angry. And so he's signing a bill to tax anyone in California who's been politically prosecuted. California is going to tax that reparation payment 100%.
One thing that I think we're going to try to do with your support is tax 100%. Anyone from California that receives any of those funds, we want to tax 100% of those proceeds. And that's an action the state of California can take. It's an action we look forward to taking.
Okay, interesting move. Now, this is something that kind of the other side of the left-wing media has called reparations for white people. Joy Reid going off on that. We'll get to that later because I'm not entirely sure if that's FCC air appropriate. A lot of these policies where they go in on taxation, where they go in on social reparations, where they go in on trying to punish citizens in their state is causing the exodus of person after person, after company after company. Zohran Mamdani, as my colleague Jarrett Stepman has written on over at the Daily Signal, is going all in on his effort to just seize property from those over on the landlord side in New York City. And it's not quite clear so far what it is that at least as far as New York City, Zohran Mamdani is going to actually be able to use as a legal mechanism to affect this housing plan that just seizes property and gives it to the people. But he's trying it. Jarrett Stepman says, and I quote, the New York City tenant director, C. Weaver, who has said that we should transition from treating property as an individual good to a collective good in her plan to impoverish middle-class white residents, is practically giddy. What kind of violations will lead to property confiscation is unclear. This could just be an excuse to come up with ticky-tack violations to weaponize the government against landlords who are often forced to operate within very tight margins in the city. In California, Exxon has won shareholder backing for a legal move to Texas. So Exxon, various other entities like energy companies in the oil industry over to the tech industry are trying to flee California because Gavin Newsom is trying to tax them into the abyss. And so people are leaving. And if you believe that we're going to see all of the big corporations and tech companies that are going to press for a Democrat Congress up in this upcoming midterm election, the Democrats are not getting the campaign dollars. Act Blue is not turning over tons of foreign dollars as it was doing during the 2024 election. So what are we actually going to see brought forward? I mean, just a bunch of pageantry. So, for example, Trump, I guess, during a cabinet meeting today said, I'm a huge fan of the New York Knicks, and the Knicks are having a bad time of it, or going to the NBA Finals. Go Knicks. I'm a lifelong fan of the Knicks. Well, Governor Kathy Hochul decided again, there's so many things voters care about. This right here could not stand. How dare Trump say he's a fan of the Knicks? Can he even name a time or place where the Knicks had a lineup here?
What do you think of him saying he's a lifelong Knicks fan? I think that's how the Times reported it.
I asked him to name the starting lineup from 1993 championship team and see how he does.
And what are
Oh, name the lineup for the 1993. Was there a 1993 championship Knicks team? Real shame. I mean, honestly, I thought she had a chance. Radio crew, we will catch you guys tomorrow on the Tony Kinnett Cast. We know that you guys have to leave. So do our excellent TV friends as well. We're going to continue on the live stream tonight. Lots more. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. So, Kathy Hochul, she's struggling because she has no idea, Donald Trump couldn't possibly be, it was a stupid non-story anyway. By the way, just to be fair, at the conference championship in 1993 and 1994, because the Knicks haven't had a title since 73, Donald Trump is actually at the, versus the Rockets in 94. Here's President Trump at the match.
It's an incredible week at Madison Square Garden, the NBA Finals, then Game 7 for the Stanley Cup on Tuesday. And how appropriate that Marv Albert would be working an NBA Finals game on this, his birthday. And we can't tell you how pleased we are that all of you folks, millions of you around the country, can be with us tonight as we celebrate for the 8th consecutive year Marv's 43rd birthday. Mazel tov, Marvelous.
So again, this is kind of the Iowa coverage, and if you cut away, you see behind the sportscasters here. Oh, who is that? Oh, wow. It's President Trump. Wow. What a surprise. Gee whiz. How strange indeed. I love this every time you have Democrats trying to be relatable. It reminds me of the mayor of Philly who couldn't spell Eagles.
Well, listen, we've got to do this. Let me hear you all say E-L-G-S-E-S, Eagles! Let's go back.
Elgises. Yeah. Incredible. Oh, stellar.
I didn't like any of that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, as far as, some of the Economist YouGov data, because some of you have asked for some of the polling information, there are over half of Americans, again, according to this poll, saying that they're definitely going to come out and vote in the midterms. Historically, whenever you have about that number at this time of year, that drops off precipitously. People always will say, oh, I'm going to get out and vote, and then don't show up. Again, going to vote is like going to the DMV. And if that's your inspiration to get out there and cast the ballot, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just not seeing it. Now, there are a couple of other interesting kind of news items for this evening that I did want to get a chance to mention to you here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. We're going to swing out, pick up some of our fine folks from the commercial, and then we're going to dive into just a little bit more here. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Still going all in. Again, we're getting ready for June. Some of those over on the left are trying as hard as they can to get through, I don't know, what it was, the LGBTQ plus 2IA M&M style stuff. I'm not sure why they've decided to go all in on this yet again. But there are a couple of rather bizarre moves from around the country to put all of the emphasis in on the LGBTQ plus whatever. Again, as though this is finally the year. We're going to rally all the stuff. Columbus City Schools in Ohio has already announced that they're doing a huge school-wide Pride March announcement for 2026 Stonewall Columbus Pride March Community Festival, all over in Boston. Mayor Michelle Wu's Office of LGBTQ Advancement is holding a trans-period pride event to discuss menstrual equity and the experience of transgender menstruators. Yeah, okay. That office received nearly $1 million of taxpayer stuff. Taxpayer dollars is incredible. I mean, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful nonsense. So the LGBTQ efforts are in full force. Again, the Virginia legislature is also trying to shove through some protections for parents who want to give their kids transgender treatments. Not good, Bob. Again, I'm not really seeing any way this is going to generate a lot of support, but it's not just on the legislative side, it's also over on the corporate side as well. So some of America's biggest companies, the ones that you support, are still paying for gender transition drugs and surgeries for kids. This is really happening. It's still happening. And our friends over at the Alliance Defending Freedom are doing something about it. Companies like American Express, Home Depot, appear to be covering irreversible experimental gender transition procedures for minors in their employee healthcare plans. This means kids can do puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and life-altering surgeries. And the companies that many of us support, or that many of you still support, I should say, are footing the bill. This stuff has to stop. And you can do something about it because a lot of these companies are publicly traded, which means that if a big enough portion of the board, if a big enough portion of those who hold stock in the company speak out against it, the company has an interest for their stakeholders in turning those policies around. We've seen this happen multiple times. The Alliance Defending Freedom has a petition that tells corporate America to stop covering these procedures. Your voice will be heard by these leaders at major companies whose decision to end coverage for these procedures could impact other companies across the country. It's a domino effect kind of a thing. I do very much encourage you to head over to the joinadf.com/Tony. That's joinadf.com/Tony. Check out their stuff there. It's excellent. Sign that petition. Really appreciate them sponsoring the show. So again, some bizarre decisions over on the left side of the aisle as what to present this year to the American people. The town of Rutland, Massachusetts, has announced they are canceling their 4th of July celebration in the 250th year of the United States. Additionally, they've announced they are not going to be refunding individuals and businesses that donated money to fund the event, claiming that they are keeping it for future events. Guys, going against like patriotic stuff this year, saying that you're like ashamed of the flag and that it's problematic, like James Talarico has said, or that, yeah, that veteran should have died, like Graham Plattner has suggested, or El Sayed claiming that the United States is a bunch of Zionist evil thugs running for the Michigan Senate. It may work really great in the primary, and it is for a lot of these candidates. It's working wonders in the primary, but when you get over to the general, it's not going to bring the numbers you might expect. Republicans learned this lesson in 2022. They ran some really out there candidates. And those out there candidates paired against a Democrat candidate who was like fairly normal. It didn't do too well. All Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, has to do in the next couple of months is just act normal, which so far it appears he's doing. And James Talarico and all of the insane things that he brings to the table and all of the insane endorsements that he's suggesting, again, like going after his own whiteness and, supporting racial reparations. I mean, when your muse is Joy Reid, of all things, yikes.
And remember when Bill Clinton went to Africa and did an apology for slavery that was very, mild? The right wanted to impeach him then. Remember, that was when they wanted to impeach him because he did that.
Girl.
Remember, they were.
And meanwhile, they're giving reparations to January 6th
white people. They only believe in reparations for
taking our tax dollars.
Yes.
To pay for these criminals, to give these criminals reparations. Have y'all heard about this?
I love this so much. I love it. So first and foremost, when funding was to be taken away for transgender theater camp in South America, when there was funding to be taken away from Sesame Street in Iraq, or again, spreading atheism in Nepal, and a ton of other bizarre and disturbing programs, there was the gnashing of teeth, there was the weeping, the clutching of every single pearl that we could find. But all of a sudden, when it's like, again, individuals on the left also qualify for this. If you have been politically prosecuted, you have access to some damage restitution funds. And they've decided to run this as the biggest, baddest, most corrupt, evil thing in the entire world. Oh, the horror and the not. Okay. Best of luck to you. An absolute best of luck situation to you. Now, the House Judiciary has also launched an investigation into Tish, Bragg, and other New York City officials over sanctuary laws and policies. I don't think that's really going anywhere. I mean, sanctuary laws, I do not believe in their current place can be tasked and kind of taken to task by a House Judiciary Committee. I just don't see that as going anywhere. I mean, of course, I'm more than happy to report on the news when it comes to this stuff. I don't really think it's going anywhere. I know that a couple of you sent that story in asking for us to talk about it. Last but certainly not least, kind of a decent moment from the cabinet meetings today. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth did mention that the United States has been supporting a prioritization to protect Nigerian Christians targeted by Islamic groups over in Nigeria. And I would make the case that this is going to find far more approval in the eyes of Americans than the Pride event stuff and the reparation argument. Here's the Secretary of War.
And I just want to note one more thing to give you a sense of how committed this president is. Maybe a year ago, he heard the call of Nigerian Christians who were being targeted and killed by ISIS in Nigeria. And he said, Pete, I want the War Department to focus on ensuring that we do everything we can to protect those Christians. Partnerships like that can take time behind the scenes, but he never wavered on it. And we got the assets there, and over the last month, and there hasn't been much coverage of this, we killed ISIS number 2 in Nigeria, who's most responsible for killing Christians and trying to target the U.S. homeland, and have since, because of the intel we gathered, killed hundreds of ISIS members who were targeting and killing Christians in Nigeria, creating a whole new opportunity there. So
there's the Department of War. There is one other piece of news on the court side that I didn't really get a chance to mention earlier in the show. The Department of Justice has launched a criminal investigation into E. Jean Carroll, the former magazine columnist who accused President Donald Trump of sexual assault. And this is an interesting investigation because E. Jean Carroll's story of how Donald Trump totally, absolutely, I pinky promise, totally abused me. The story changed a lot, multiple times. And then when President Trump was tried on this, he was found liable for defaming her character. But then again, the jury also pointed out, there's no evidence that Donald Trump committed any kind of sexual assault. The investigation, according to the CNN article here, says is focused on whether Carroll committed perjury in testimony tied to her 2 different civil lawsuits against the president. One alleging that he sexually abused Carroll in a New York department store in the mid-90s, and a second for defaming her in 2019 when he denied the assault. She said that she wasn't his type and claimed that she made it up to boost the sales for the book. The prosecutor's theory hinges on a 2022 deposition statement by Carroll that she received no outside funding for her lawsuit, though it was later revealed that billionaire Reid Hoffman had paid some of the legal fees and expenses. You're going to see a lot of investigation from the Department of Justice and the Treasury Department over individuals being funded by certain things and then claiming, I just did this all myself, grassroots stuff. Can't do that. You can't do that, especially under oath. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Not a ton of external details to hit, but again, just useful to dive into. Oh my goodness. From on the mail time side of things in here, we'll go ahead and dive into the old mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
There is one election that I failed to tell you guys about in the updates from yesterday. Representative Al Green, Mr. Dastardly Deeds, undone, that guy. Well, Mr. cane-waving Al Green, unfortunately, alas, was defeated in his primary by freshman Representative Christian Menefee. So Christian Menefee is, again, another young radical guy. But Al Green, who has become an increasing embarrassment to his party for standing up every chance he gets and filing brand new impeachment articles because he promises Donald Trump is going to be Hitler any day now. Yeah, he lost. He got absolutely spanked in that election. So our thoughts and prayers go to Al Green and his dastardly deeds. We'll miss you on the floor of the House. I did want to get to that particular mail time question. So to that, again, the best way to get a question over to Mail Time, in our description, you'll find a link to our Discord. You can find the Mail Time stuff all through there. A very kind super chat from The New Life, $5, said, you make Indiana proud, Tony. Thanks for all you do, brother. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. As the Hoosierist of Hoosiers, we try. But as a national show, I often get asked why I don't spend more time focusing on Indiana politics. And then they all recoil in horror when I say that I'd rather talk to you guys about national issues than whether or not the Secretary of State is going to issue a whatever, who cares? So over to Velvet Jazz question from earlier. Said, why shouldn't the U.S. say we are staying in the Strait of Hormuz to guarantee that it stays open, but the military will leave as negotiations continue? Would that bring gas down? No. And the reason it wouldn't bring gas down is because if Iran can sell oil unmolested to China and to Russia and to other countries. So first of all, in the Strait of Hormuz, there are a lot of different ports that aren't just Iran's. Iran, it's not like Iran, it's like a little Gulf of Iran. No. The Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf as a whole has a lot of different countries that are bordering and have ports that you ship various kinds of petroleum products, as well as an influx of a ton of global trade out of. But as far as the United States occupying, as it were, the Strait of Hormuz, could the U.S. Navy do so? Yes, it could. However, what you do run the risk of is if the United States occupies Karg Island, there will be no negotiations from that point at all moving forward. Now, there are a couple of other islands the U.S. could occupy, but if the United States occupies with boots on the ground an Iranian piece of land, what will that mean? That will mean that there are going to be every last little bit that the Iranian regime has at those U.S. troops stationed there, and you do run a reasonable risk of those service members being injured or killed. And that's genuinely what the Trump administration so far is trying to avoid. That's what they're trying to not have plastered all over every media outlet in the country, is that Trump went in and got a bunch of people killed. Now, it may come down to the United States being forced to control Karg Island and take over the Iranian oil supply and refinement, just like in other places, for example, with Venezuela. So far, making kind of, if you do this, we do this kind of things. The Iranian regime has other problems on the inside. I think the Trump administration is still waiting to see whether or not the Kurds are going to do anything first. Again, that coalition kind of surrounding Iran, that's probably where more of the White House's attention is at the moment. So do I think the U.S. Navy is going to have to, at some point, with a coalition with the Brits and, God forbid, maybe the French and a couple of other navies from around the world? I would say India, but India's navy is absolutely useless and is an embarrassment. Will they actually someday get around to kind of keeping the Strait of Hormuz open? Yeah, I do believe so. But why not simply say that? There's a couple of additional things that aren't being broadcast to international news that are still going on. From Steeler Jen, have I heard anything else about Don Lemon? That story seems to have been swept aside. So regarding Don Lemon and his investigation and those situational investigations, the U.S. Magistrate Doherty's newly unsealed order denied 5 search warrants in the city's Church Face Act case for lack of probable cause. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot that's going on. Essentially, there are defense attorneys that are complaining that they're moving too fast. But still, a lot of these federal cases, they take time. There's not a whole lot to tell you until, as the Viceroy of the Trade Federation said, better not to mention that until we have something to report. So that's, kind of some things we don't mention for a while just because there's not a whole lot going on except for a continue of that investigation. Looking at a couple of the other questions here from Cheryl, pardon my simplistic question, but is there any way that Trump could apply pressure to the Senate to get the Save America Act passed before the midterms? The elected representatives are completely ignoring the fact that the country's majority wants it. Okay, it's a great question. Here's the simple answer. No, the president can't do anything here. He can't. Even if we pretend that Vice President J.D. Vance actually has some magical, not named in the Constitution power of bringing the Senate back in and forcing them to stay, he doesn't have that. The Vice President does not have that kind of power. But let's pretend that he did. And he gets them all in there and he says, you guys need to do the stuff. They're not going to do it. They're not. Right now, Republicans have a 53-vote majority in the Senate. The filibuster rule says you need 60 votes to do things that aren't reconciliation budget measures. The Senate parliamentarian, in fact, there's just no way that reconciliation should be used for the Save America Act. It's not a budget issue. It's a law. So the Senate would need to break the filibuster. You need a simple majority in the Senate, 51 votes. So 50 Republicans plus Vice President J.D. Vance to get rid of the filibuster. Here's the problem. There are 4 to 5 to 6 to now 7 senators on the Republican side of the aisle who are not going to do that. We talked about him earlier on in the show. Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, he's not going to do it. He's retiring. Tom Tillis of North Carolina throws a fit, whines to Politico every 5 minutes. He's not going to do it. Susan Collins of Maine, who's the only person you could possibly threaten, and that's if John Thune and the Senate Republican Committee said, we're going to pull funding from your campaign unless you say we need to get rid of the filibuster, which they could do, but that's still just one vote. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Now, if it's only those 4, you're actually kind of okay. If you take Susan Collins away and Susan Collins agrees, you can have 50 Republican senators, and that's assuming that Bill Cassidy, John Curtis, now John Cornyn aren't going to vote no on getting rid of the filibuster. Then Vice President J.D. Vance could swoop in and knock it over, and then the filibuster is gone. You can pass the Save America Act with a simple majority. That's not going to happen. It's not. And it's not Thune's fault either. Well, what if they pulled committee assignments? Great. Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis, Bill Cassidy, now John Cornyn, they're not going to do anything. They're not. What's the only answer for this? Wait for the next election. I'm sorry, there's no other way. The 17th Amendment of the United States Constitution prevents states from recalling senators. Senators used to be elected by the state legislature, and then they could recall their senators and elect new ones. But that's not a thing anymore because we directly elect senators. And there's no provision in any state or Commonwealth constitution that allows people to recall senators and elect brand new ones mid-cycle. So you're stuck. It's done. I'm not going to lie to you. Well, Trump said you got to attach the Save America Act to every bill. The Senate doesn't care. Go ahead, at one of you, by all means, message your state's senators. You message John Curtis, you message John Cornyn, message Bill Cassidy or McConnell or Tillis or whoever, and ask them if no bills get passed, does this mean that you'll pass the filibuster? No, they don't care that the majority of the country wants something. Which, by the way, the reason the Save America Act should be passed is because it is a good bill, not because the majority of the country wants something. Just because a lot of people want something doesn't mean they need to get it. That's the truth. That is the truth. Oh, they're a representative. They're supposed to do what their people want. No, that's not what a representative means. A representative, I send a representative who I believe will make good decisions on my behalf. Just because I want something doesn't. Now, in the Save America Act, it should be passed because it's a good bill. But just because I really, really want it, I guarantee you go ask a room full of elementary school kids if they want brownies for dinner, you'll get 100% of them that are like, yes, of course I want this. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Does that mean that they need it? No. But the reason to vote for the Save America Act is because it's a common sense piece of voter ID legislation that makes a lot of sense. That's the answer. Now, there's also the, would this make you support a term limit rule? No. I hear the arguments for it. I know a lot of you really want a term limit rule, and I do sympathize. The problem is, it is allowing voters to be lazy. The problem is voters. If you want to get rid of the person, go out and get rid of the person. And for all of this, well, we can't do it. There are incumbents. Incumbents never lose. I give you the last primary as an example. It can be done. You can get rid of the doddering old, aggravated, crotchety old man in favor of someone who might actually be more in touch with their voters, with their constituents. But if we start imposing term limits and stuff, what you're going to get is like New Zealand parliamentary fever. Well, they'll solve it. Who cares? American voters don't need more of that. They don't need more of that at all. From Athene Aris, why does the Trump administration keep giving Iran so many chances to make a deal? And then a follow-up from Crow Dragon Pirate says, does Trump even care about the strait being open at least before midterms? So the answer, he highlights globalism and things like that. So first of all, international trade is not globalism. That's silly. That's populist Bill Clinton drivel. That's not true. Just because we trade with another country does not mean globalism. Globalism means putting other countries before your own citizens. International law bullcrap. No, I believe in American imperialist excellence. Not the European kind of imperialism, American imperialism. Not nation building and we're going to set up a democracy for you. No, Teddy Rooseveltian, Cuba is now ours. The Philippines are now ours. We are administrating. The sacrifices stop. We're here. And that means that it is in fact best that international waterways are kept free of Chinese garbage and bribery and thuggery and Islamic thuggery and piracy, which is literally the oldest tradition of the United States Navy, is sinking Muslim pirates. Well, they weren't all official Muslim. Shut up. Absolutely. Sinking Muslim pirates is 100% the greatest and oldest tradition of the U.S. Navy. And also officers pimp smacking really feminine ratings and enlisted naval men, according to Admiral John Paul Jones. Another conversation for another time. Regarding why does the Trump administration give Iran many chances to make a deal? I believe right now that the Trump administration believes that if Iran continues to go through the stretch and fracture, at some point they're going to recognize they are up against the wall. I think that what they're really looking for is for Iran to turn away the very last effort of goodwill, and then they're going to do something. They're waiting for something clearly on the military chessboard to finish things off. I don't know what that is. I'm not going to pretend that I know what it is either. But at least at this present time, I think they're waiting for something. And there is movement on the inside. The diplomatic wires from the inside of the country suggest that. Again, we're going to have to wait and see how forward. To answer Crow Dragon Pirate's question, though, it harms our geopolitical foes more than it harms us for the Strait of Hormuz to be closed. The issue with gas prices in the country is the Strait of Hormuz is not just churning out unleaded. It's not. It is trading out commodities that are traded on the international market. For example, things like fertilizer, things like, and I can't remember the name of it, there is an industrial lubricant, there's an industrial chemical, there's an industrial material that that a lot of manufacturing industry loses. And it's a very simple name, and I'm frustrated. I can't remember it. I apologize. But anywho, the reason that those prices are high is because it is a global game. Now, there are imbeciles who've said, well, the U.S. is going to start experiencing gas shortages. No, that's not the truth. But it is an internationally traded commodity, and it is going to continue to be traded internationally. Now, whether or not the United States can increase production so dramatically of its own oil reserves that it's inconsequential what happens in the Strait of Hormuz. And the United States can just go ahead and acquire Venezuela if it wants to. We'll need the authorization of Congress, and run its oil industry in the same way. It sure can. Absolutely, as a non-voting territory, not as a state, obviously. But it could absolutely do so. Is it going to do that? No. And I think that's kind of the bigger question. And again, it's an international waterway. We should not be sacrificing major international things to kind of foreign thuggery groups, just like OPEC. We should have dealt with OPEC when it started. And a lot of that oil infrastructure in Iran and such was built by the United States and other Western powers. We do have a stake in it. I mean, as much as some would disagree. So again, a lot of that there's going to be a lot of change, and that brings me to the question: do I think that some of the gas prices are coming down because people are just getting used to the new normal, or are people is the market either adjusting to the new reality, or is it in anticipation of a deal? That's from Nut Smasher over in the Discord. The answer to that question is it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. People think it's going to be the new normal, some of them, and some think this isn't going to go on forever. Iran has promised death and destruction for all of this time now and hasn't been able to deliver. the diplomatic wires and the state of the inside of the country is clear. They're trying to appease the Iranian people on the inside now. Guns are making their way through the country. It will break at one point. So, any other mail time questions on on this instance? A lot of questions on some issues that I don't think we have any other updates on yet. And I hate to say that to you guys yet, but there are just some cases that aren't ready for comment yet. And I really am trying very hard not to give you guys information, or what I would say is really just bluster and speculation on various things. So we're going to be done for tonight. Guys, we'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, here on the Tony Kinnett Cast for more hoots, breaking news, and nonsense. So for the final sign-off, this is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.